influenced my decision to term limit myself. It wasn't because I had any real negative experience in the legislature. It's hard. It's a very, very hard job. And
it's an honor to have you here. You're a former state senator. You were in the legislature for 8 years.
Yep.
Got a pastoral background. You've got a leadership training background. You're a fellow at the Colson Center. There's a lot of really interesting pieces to you and what you do, and
yeah.
I'm excited to have you here today to kind of talk about some of that. So,
thank you.
For some of the people who don't know you, give us a little bit, of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I have officially retired from the Senate. I term limited myself after 8 years here in our state capitol.
And yet, I still see you here
That's right.
more than most senators.
Every time I'm back, people are like, you just can't stay away, can you? No, it's an opportunity to come back and continue to try to help where I can and encourage colleagues and continue to do the leadership development that really has been a passion of mine for so long. I actually come from a very political family. And then have, over the last probably 20 to 25 years, have focused on leadership development. And over the last probably 4 or 5 years, it's really morphed into what I say is professional leadership development. So coming alongside leaders in every space, whether it's government and politics, business and the workforce, or even the faith kind of nonprofit space, really trying to help leaders level up their game, because I think it's so important for us to understand, the influence that we have, the ability to be able to make a difference and then equip ourselves to do that. So that's my real passion, and that actually is what influenced my decision to term limit myself. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because I had any real negative experience in the legislature. It's hard. It's a very, very hard job, and some of my newly minted freshman legislator colleagues are discovering that, right? And so I get a chance to kind of give them some perspective.
What do you say to them or what do they say to you? Like, what makes it so hard? Is it the relationships? Is it the criticisms? Is it the understanding legislation? Like what?
It's all of the above.
All right.
It really is. Yeah. The difficulty is, in fact, I had a conversation earlier this week with a member of the legislature here currently, who was a very high-capacity leader, very accomplished in his previous career. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I tell, aspiring candidates, and particularly at this level, because I do some kind of leadership coaching, is essentially anybody in this building that's holding elected office has some orientation towards a type A personality, right? I mean, you're driven, you've got vision, you probably can articulate, you have to. So you got some different skill sets that lend themselves to this particular role. People see that, they elect you to the position. And then the difficulty really starts. Because you end up, in previous roles, maybe you were the CEO, or you were the executive. And so basically you always have 51% of the vote. You can, just
where you want to go.
You can hear input, but at the end of the day, you just say, all right, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Here, you have to really understand people. I tell people all the time, I graduated from college with a degree in history and psychology and never used it. Truly, didn't ever use it until I came to the Senate.
Wow.
Where you need history, and you definitely need psychology, because you need to understand just kind of how people are wired. Certain people tick a certain way, other people tick a different way, and you need both of them to move your piece of legislation forward.
Yeah.
You also have to moderate your expectations, right? Because everybody's like, I'm going to do this. And then you hit that wall of the pre-existing political machine that slows down progress. I tell people all the time that the legislature does not lend itself to speed and agility.
Yeah.
And that expectation is one that people don't understand when they're on the outside. And so it takes a while to adjust to that. Once you adjust and you figure out how the system works, then you can more effectively work the system.
The system was designed that way too, to be slow.
That's right.
And to be tedious, and because the founders recognized that would keep us safe, because you couldn't easily strip our liberties quickly, right?
Well, I mean, I got this question all the time. I still do. Do you think we should be a full-time legislature? And I say, all right, do you think that political leaders should have more time to make more laws. And all of a sudden it was like, I don't know.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Because in Indiana, if you don't know, we're a part-time legislature.
That's right.
January to March,
Yeah,
April.
basically first quarter.
Yep.
And there's other states that have a full-time legislature.
Texas is
you know,
biannual,
yeah.
I think. They meet every other year.
Exactly. So they're on to something.
Yeah,
but to
yeah.
your point, government was designed not to make it easier to pass law.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the lawmaking sausage factory, it is extremely frustrating because you're like, oh, we really need to get this thing, because you're trying to address real needs that are affecting the people in your state.
Sure.
And so you're moving at a glacial pace. And yet, the challenge is, okay, if it was easier to do this, then you would end up not always getting better public policy in the long run, which theoretically is the goal.
Yeah, there's a lady that I've been working with, and she's got a great idea for reform in the victim space of sexual assault survivors.
Okay.
So she's very passionate about it. I met her at the previous church I worked at, and about 4 years ago, she started working with legislators. She has a petition of 5,000 people who've signed this petition, all over the state. So it's like got a lot of support, and it's, she's learning the hard way, like it is not, and for whatever reason, the bill will just die somewhere.
That's right.
It's like lack of
That's
time, lack of understanding.
Yeah.
And so, and I keep telling her, I'm like, listen, you've gotten a little further every single year.
Exactly.
It's been 4 years.
Exactly.
Come back again next year, we'll file it again.
That's right.
But you see the ups and downs emotionally because,
Yeah.
it takes the wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
I've worked so hard for 4 years,
Yeah.
and I still can't get the result.
Well, and I'll never forget an experience I had my very first year. It would have been the 2017 session. There were a couple ladies who had actually committed crimes in our state. They'd served their time in the women's prison, and now were advocating on some key issues that were having real impact on mothers in prisons. And so they show up here, they're very well dressed, but they're brand new to the process, and they're just kind of armchair advocates trying to figure it out. So they had some legislative folks that had come alongside them and help them. And so one of them's name was Christina. And I remember distinctly, I was standing on the floor of the Senate, I look through the window, and I see Christina sitting out on the bench outside, and she's glum. And so I slipped out there, I popped down next to her, and I said, Christina, how you doing? Well, my bill is, it's getting torn apart. And they adjusted something with an amendment. I said, well, okay, was it something that, like, this was a critical piece and it was a hill you need to die on? Well, no, not really, but it's so disappointing. I said, Christina, your bill is still alive.
Yeah.
Like, that's the win.
Praise
keep
God.
Going,
Yeah.
keep going. I mean,
Yeah.
it will never look at the end the way it looked at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they got it passed. These two gals got it passed because they persevered. Now, it was radically different and probably pared down significantly to what it originally started with. Why does that matter? Because the average person on the outside does not understand that. They're looking at this whole process through a keyhole or through a headline or through a tweet or whatever, and assuming they've got the whole story, and they sit there and go, why can't you guys actually move this? We're a Republican supermajority, whatever the complaint is. Why didn't we do this, or why did we do that? And I just try to gently say, there's always more to the story.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult once you get on the inside. But those that make the adjustment and have a character personality trait of perseverance
Yeah.
end up seeing success.
That's so good. I tell people all the time, just to be influential, just show up.
That's
and
right.
Persevere, right?
That's right.
And it's amazing how many people get involved in politics. They have such a really good start, but then they get one loss or one little defeat, and they give up. And I'm like, wow, you planted the seed. You tilled the field. You bought the field, tilled the field, and planted the seed.
That's
you
right.
got a little harvest, but the harvest wasn't as big as you wanted.
That's right.
And so you just walk away from the field. I'm like,
That's
no,
right.
no, just replant.
Well,
stay
it's
perseverant.
that strategy of incrementalism,
Yeah.
right? That's the approach that I've seen work,
Yeah.
is take an analogy of a football field, right? Every play that the quarterback runs is not a Hail Mary to the end zone.
Sure.
There's occasionally an opportunity for that, but only occasionally.
Yeah.
Typically, it's we need 3 more yards to get the first down, and once we get this first down, we need 10 more yards to get the next one,
Yeah.
and then the next one, and the next one, and hopefully we push it across the goal line. Well, We understand that in football. We don't quite understand that in the legislative process. And to your point, I don't think our culture is making it easier for us to appreciate the legislative process because we live in a culture of instant gratification, right? Everything's right at our fingertips. In fact, I could, put my order in for my coffee ahead of time. They make it. I pay for it. I just walk in, grab it, walk back out.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even sit in the drive-thru anymore because it takes too long because there are 3 cars in front of me, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how we've gotten. And so our expectations are instant results. And this process is anything but instant results. There are results, but they're never instant. And so you just have to stick with it.
What you're telling me is we need an app for the legislators that they can just put in their law,
That's right.
send it off, and then when they get here, it's already passed.
Do an online poll. What do we think? Okay, let's go for it. Yeah. And back to the earlier point, we laugh at that, and we would love that because we have become so acclimated to instantaneous. But would our government actually be better for it?
Probably not. No way.
No way. Yeah. And that's because our founders understood the fallenness of the human nature, and making sure that we have checks and balances and things like that in order to make theoretically the best laws that we could make for a flourishing society.
Yeah, that's good. What about leadership? So you have the Sagamore Leadership Institute. What are some of the big key mistakes that you find high capacity leaders or up and coming leaders often make?
Yeah, I do a lot of leadership. You referenced the Sagamore Leadership Initiative. We started that probably 16 years ago, and that's really for next generation leaders, middle school, high school primarily, some college.
And you ran the Who's Your Leadership series before I took it over after you. Yeah,
so that was actually for adults, and that was focused on public policy and culture. So Sagamore is next-gen stuff, and I've actually passed the leadership of that organization off to somebody else. And my full-time focus largely is with adult leaders, right?
And that's
with
called
JBC Leadership.
JBC,
Yeah, and it's because I was put on this planet to help leaders get better at becoming their best. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And even when I was in the legislature, I was never one of those that was always working on the next bill. I was trying to help good legislation move, but because I wasn't always filing bills and trying to work them through the process, it freed me up to help other leaders find success in what they were doing, and then do some leadership infrastructural development that needed to happen that is still there in terms of onboarding for new Republican senators, the Senate Leadership Summit, and some of those kinds of things that hopefully will long outlast me and nobody will ever remember how it started. But the reason I did all that, and the reason I actually term limited myself, was because this job as a legislator is very all-consuming. If you take it seriously, it's not a 9-to-5er. It's 24/7. You always have to be available to serve.
And it's not just the first quarter of the year.
No, it's not.
All year round.
That was in all the little fine print, once you're actually sworn in, then they give you the fine print. And as much as we say we're a part-time legislature, we are in terms of when we're in session. But I always tell people this job is as much or as little as you make it, right? So if you take it seriously, it is a full-time experience, which is fine, and it should be. For me, it became so consuming that my leadership development activities became a side hustle. And so then I'm doing some internal processing going, okay, what's the best use of my time?
Yeah.
And when I think about why I'm here on the planet and what I'm passionate about, what I've got experience in, I can either continue to engage politically, which is super important, or I can continue to go all in upstream with worldview development, leadership development, because whoever wins the idea war influences everything downstream, including politics. So that went into the decision. And the goal is to then try to help leaders in every space lead towards their legacy, is how I put it, right?
Yeah.
Like help them understand why are you here on the planet and what's your ultimate why for what you're doing.
What are some disciplines of good leaders that you see? Things like, even little things like they get up early, or they read a lot, or, they're good at follow through, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are some of those key things that you've noticed that in any industry across the board, you will find these same key characteristics
Yeah.
in every good leader.
Well, and I would start even a step further back from that, and that is what are the best character qualities of a leader, and then how does that manifest itself in terms of characteristics?
Sure, yeah.
So, for example, humble, right?
good.
Being willing to recognize that I don't have all the answers. Well, that opens up the door for collaboration. I tell people that the smartest leader in the room is the one that surrounds the table with smarter leaders in the room.
That's good.
Right? Because I don't have a unlimited capacity to be able to lead perfectly. And so it starts with humility. Therefore, then, a posture of what I call thoughtfulness, right? So how we think about the issues and then how we act and interact with people. We've got to be thoughtful. I can't have influence with you. As you said earlier, I can't have influence if I don't have presence, right? There is a direct correlation between your ability to influence and the proximity of your distance from that person.
Yeah.
But then it's, okay, what kind of influence am I going to have with you? I can't have influence with you if you don't like me, right?
Sure.
And so if my personality is off-putting, or if I always walk into the room and I'm always the smartest guy in the room and I'm going to make sure that's the first thing you understand, or I'm, kind of always pitching my resume in conversations, like nobody likes that guy,
Yeah.
right? We all have done things that are worthy, but the humble leader is the one that can come in, and I've been in meetings with some fantastic leaders that were actually leading the whole organization or the meeting or the whatever, and if you didn't know that that was their role, you wouldn't have known it
That's cool.
because they were just in there. So then beyond that, there's a number of things, right? So I think your spiritual health is important. To me, that guides everything that I do. So making sure that my spiritual disciplines are in place, reading the Word, praying, continuing to try to lead my family well. Your relational health is super important. If my marriage and my family are not healthy, that is such an important dynamic in my life that I am not bringing my best because my interests are divided. My mental health and wellness is off because my relationships are broken or whatever. So I've got to make sure I prioritize that. And then there's this basic idea that if you want to lead others well, you've got to learn to lead yourself well.
It's good.
And that's where you get into the disciplines, right? So my physical health, am I eating right? Am I exercising? And I'm one, I'm trying. We're all trying, right? There's more that we should be doing, but I need to take that seriously.
Yeah.
I can't bring my best if I'm sick all the time and things like that. And the body I've been given, there's a stewardship issue there. In terms of reading, you talk about reading. I'm one of those nerds that books are my love language. It's like, I love having books. And I've got, shelves and shelves. And my kids are always like, Dad, have you read all those? Like, no, I haven't read them all, but it's about having it on your shelf. It makes you seem smarter, But there is something to that. And so I actually track the books I read every year, how many books I'm reading every year, what kind were they? Was it a worthy book that I would recommend to somebody else, or was it just kind of an entertaining read? Because you need both.
Yeah.
And then always taking notes of all that stuff, because there's this idea leaders are readers, right? So you're always, at some point, you're going to get out of the formal educational process as a student, and then the real decision begins, which is, am I going to continue to be a student of life and leadership? And if so, then I've got to have the proactive discipline of continuing to have teachers come and teach me through books, podcasts, sermons, speeches, articles, whatever it is that I can find that can continue to feed me.
That's great. I love that. I think that's some really good advice for our listeners. And so take me back to politics, right? So when did you feel the call? Because you're a pastor, right? You have a pastoral background. We talked about the Leadership Institute and everything you're doing with that, and then, but your family has a political history. Your uncle Phil ran for president.
Yeah,
so that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
On the Republican ticket in 1980.
Yeah,
he was running against Reagan in the primary. Then,
he was. He lost against a guy named Reagan.
Wow, that's
and the rest
awesome.
is history. No, it's we never had a choice about which family we're born into.
Yeah.
Right. God determines that. But in my case, on my dad's side in particular, both my Uncle Phil and my Uncle Dan were both members of Congress. And my dad actually ran for Congress 3 times.
Wow.
And interestingly, had he won, it would have been the first time in U.S. history that 3 brothers had served together in Congress.
Wow.
But he didn't. He lost he ran 3 times, lost each race in the general, and lost the last race by 86 votes.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was a congressional race.
It was a congressional race.
In the general, he
right.
lost by 86 votes.
That's right.
Wow.
And so it became with my uncle having run in the Republican primary in 1980, which that was all during the late 70s, early 80s, was kind of the real rise of what they call the Kennedys of the right.
Yeah.
People magazine did an article about the Kennedys of the right.
Okay.
And so when I was born in 73, by the time you're hitting the late 70s, early 80s, like, this is just kind of
Life.
the Crane family
Just
business.
normal, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You'd have been
We didn't
8,
know,
9,
old enough
10.
to begin to understand that there was stuff going on that, like, people were noticing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or seeing, Crane for President bumper stickers and things like
Yeah.
that are now historical artifacts that, we just have in our garage or something like that. But at the time, it was kind of that was our environment. Now, the assumption would be, well, of course, then you would end up here. And for those that knew my family history, they made that assumption. I never made that assumption. Ironically, God used my dad's loss, the 3rd race in particular, to help him see the bigger picture. And he tells this story. He's passed away now, but he often told this story of the day after the election. And I mean, he was devastated because it was so close.
So close. If I
And
would have
he-
just knocked one more day.
Exactly. I mean, you
Yeah.
get down to that, you're
Yeah.
running the calculus and going, man, we were that close.
Yeah.
But also just felt so committed to fighting the good fight that God had called him to do this. Like, what's going on? So I come to his office after school at age 7. Of course, I don't remember this, but he told the story and told it often. And I had, in school, cut out and colored a little 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place ribbon and handed it to him and said, that's for being my dad.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And God used that to reframe everything, because I have 3 younger brothers.
Yeah.
And my dad realized, because he was a hard charger, our family is kind of a hard charging family. My grandfather was a syndicated newspaper columnist for 50 years, 350 papers across the country.
Accomplished. You guys were very accomplished.
But always like,
Yeah.
let's save the culture in order to save the country, in order to save the world.
Yeah.
Too much is given, much is required. All these
Sure.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
God used that to help him realize that had he actually won, we would have grown up in a single parent household.
Wow.
Not because my mom and dad would have gotten a divorce, and they never did.
Yeah.
They were a week shy of 52 years of marriage.
But he would have been working out there.
That's exactly
And you would have
right.
been getting raised.
And my
back
mom
here.
would have been raising the 4 of us. And yet, God used that loss to allow him to be present in our formative years, and then exponentially increase his impact through his sons, and now his grandchildren, and now his great-grandchildren,
That's amazing.
many of whom he has never even met now,
Yeah.
right? And so God does those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I'm able to be a part of that legacy. And so when we first ran in 2016, I dedicated my race to him.
Oh, that's cool.
And I will never forget the night of the primary, because it was kind of the heavy lifting was in the primary,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The night of the primary, we had decided we're gonna have a party, win or
Yeah.
lose. Like, if we lose, it's thank you, we're over.
Yeah, we worked hard for this.
That's right.
We're getting a party.
But I had the opportunity to say a few words, and that was one of the things that I said. Because at our announcement
Is he still alive
event,
at that
yes.
point? Yeah, that's cool.
At our announcement event months before, I dedicated it to him publicly.
Okay.
And I said, Dad, it took 35 years, but God's honored your faithfulness.
Holy smokes.
I was
bet
powerful.
that meant a
Oh.
lot. Yeah.
It meant a lot to me, meant a
Yeah.
lot to him, meant a lot to my mom, because
Yeah.
she was having to shoulder all that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The spousal role is often overlooked.
Yeah.
And none of us could do anything without our spouses.
Yeah.
We're kind of the face and voice of so much, but man, they are the engine that drives everything.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow,
it was a
that's-
powerful moment.
That's incredible.
Powerful.
Your brothers, one's a pastor, right?
Yeah, so I have a brother who's a pastor on the Near East Side.
Yep.
Another brother who's working for a coffee company, and my youngest brother, Stephen, is actually the managing editor for the Morgan County Correspondent.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Down in Martinsville.
I met him at the Morgan County Fair last year.
Yes, and so they actually, about 2 or 3 years ago, they tried to buy the Martinsville Reporter, and Gannett would not sell.
Okay.
And so finally, they got a group of investors together and said, all right, then we're going to create another local paper, because they weren't getting enough local news through the Gannett chain. And so they did, and they're very successful.
Wow.
They got a lot of traction. So he's running that whole project down there, and he's working hard and enjoying it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up, and I appreciate the time. And
You bet.
I want people to know, too, that you come out of your way once a month, and you sit down here with me, and we talk life, we talk politics, we talk family, faith, and, you've really been a great mentoring voice in my life. And it just goes back years. I remember the first time I heard about you, somebody at your church, I think you were going to maybe Kingsway at the time over in Avon. Somebody at your church who we were mutual friends I used to work with, they were like, hey, you and John are really similar. You seem like you guys kind of have that same sort of cut from the same cloth. And so I started following you and then getting to know you, the Who's Your Leadership series. And so, just on behalf of, what you've done for our family and just helping to lead us, and we've grown a lot, I've grown a lot through your leadership. So I just want to say thank you and let people know, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are impacting the leaders that are out front, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely give you props for being one of those guys.
You.
Yeah.
And it's my pleasure. Like I said earlier, I put on the planet to help leaders get better.
Yeah.
And nothing gives me more satisfaction than to be able to come alongside people and use some of the experiences I've had, typically all the missteps, right? And go, don't do what I did there, do it better.
Yeah.
But to help leaders who are in strategic positions of influence, and yourself included. And so I'm grateful to do it, and look forward to being able to continue those conversations.
That's awesome. Thanks, John. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah.
Where do
Absolutely.
they go?
Thanks. All the stuff that I'm doing, if you come to craneleadership.org, so that's kind of our hub.
CRANE.
CRANE, leadership.org, and would love to help anybody that needs help. Just reach out to us. There's a contact page on there, and those emails get sent to me, and then we do leadership events. I do a lot of public speaking, so I'm doing probably 100 to 120 events a year.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, locally, statewide, national, and international. Some are small, some are larger, but do that. We've got what's called the Crane Leadership Roundtable, which is a leadership intensive cohort. And then we've also got the Crane Leadership Community, which is for executive leaders, a monthly gathering. And then I also do some individual coaching in leadership, life, politics, public speaking, a variety of things. So if any of that's of interest to any folks in your audience, I'd be happy to follow up with them. Yeah.
Have you written a book?
I have not written a book, but
I feel like you need to write a book.
I will say this: there might be something in the percolating.
In the works. All right.
Yes, in the works.
I was just thinking when you're saying all that, it's like this guy needs to write a book. Thanks for being flexible today, and that was good stuff.
Yeah, good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.